year, and so far, somebody asked me, I think I said this last week too, somebody asked me how my New Year was going, or matter of fact, it was in before the second Sunday. How's your New Year going? And I said, well, it's going great. We're only a couple days in, but it's going great, and now if the rest of the New Year can keep up with that, we'll be doing good. But I hope everybody is having a blessed New Year and everything. I hope everybody is also participating in the fast, with us. But now, remember that everyone's fast doesn't look the same. The way we fast is personal between us and God. We just need to ask God what He would want us to fast. And fasting is about denying the flesh, but there's a lot of things that we can do to fast, I believe. Like I said, it's between us and God. We're denying the flesh. We have things like the Daniel fast, and I mentioned that last week too. Just about eliminating certain foods out of our diet. Seems like all the good stuff goes away, right? I don't know about you. I think I'd rather full fast or partial fast any day over Daniel fast, because it's just like, man, there's nothing good left to eat. So anyway, there he is. I'm just picky. But anyway, or you can do a partial fast, and I told you that, partial fast could be where you're fasting one meal a day or 2 meals a day for the 21 days. Or you can, we've done it before where we did Daniel fast and a partial fast. And we've done Daniel fast, partial fast, full fast. I mean, we've broke it up over the 21 days. Or we can do a full fast, where you just don't, you eliminate food. So there's a lot of different ways we can do it. But we want to make sure, and I mentioned this last week, and I think it's very important, not everybody can fast the way everybody else can. We're all bound by our health. Do not do something fasting that's going to hurt you physically. If you have any concerns, talk to your doctor on it and find out what you can actually do. But there's always something we can fast. Let's say you can't fast a meal even. If you're that far, you can't fast a meal. There's a lot of other things that we can fast. Let's say you for supper every night you have dessert. It won't kill you to go without dessert, and I'm sure your doctor will agree with me. But there's certain things that we can fast, things that are sacrificed, things that deny our flesh that we really desire. There's certain things we can do, like desserts or sweets, coffee and soda. I don't know about you, but like in Kalispell, I don't know how many people that go to the coffee shop 2 and 3 times a day, buying, I don't know how much they cost. I don't go to them, and I don't knock anybody for going to them, but they're $5-6 a piece or whatever they are. But, so if that's something you do, maybe you could fast something like that. There's things we can fast that our flesh wants, that our flesh desires. There's things also like, now this ain't food or liquid, but what about our TV? What about the news? What about social media? And in your time of fast, those are things that are really not bad things to be fasting along with your regular fast, is get rid of some of that. Now, with us, we have sermons on and stuff like that we're pouring into us through our TV. A lot of good sermons out there that we can be pouring into ourselves while we're in our time of fast. But that's all things that those things are things that we can do besides fasting food. Anything that our flesh wants, we can use that to deny the flesh. I don't know about, the flesh wants what the flesh wants. Sometimes it might just be simple as right there. It could be something as simple as something like that. Now, pardon me, I'm going to probably be taking a lot of drinks today. My mouth is so dry. But, use the time that we fast to spend time with the Lord. Spend time praying and seeking Him. Spend time reading His Word, watching sermons. There's so many things that we can be that we can be looking at that will benefit us from fasting. We don't want to just we just don't want to abstain from food and call that good. Just remember this, if it's not a sacrifice to you, it's not a sacrifice to the Lord. There's a saying out there, no pain, no gain. no pain, no gain. It isn't always easy to fast. How many here like to fast? Okay, unanimous. Not one of us like to fast. Not one of us like to fast. Now, last week I preached a message on fasting and praying with a purpose, and I want to continue in that general area, seeing that we're still fasting. So I'm going to continue with that today. I told you that fasting without a purpose is just a diet. How many agree with me? Fasting without a purpose is just a diet. It's just abstaining from food. It's just going hungry for the sake of going hungry with no purpose whatsoever. It's just a diet. So we need to make sure that we fast with a purpose. But I mean, there's benefits for say if you're just fasting, that's all you're doing. Benefit of losing weight. How many of us here think we can't afford to lose weight? I'm not in that list. I could definitely afford to lose weight. That's a benefit of fasting. And fasting is good for the body. Why? Because it also gets rid of the toxics out of our body when we fast. Purity. There's a lot of good reasons, a lot of good things for fasting, but if we're just fasting for the purpose of fasting, that's all you're getting is a health benefit. You're not getting a spiritual benefit at all. Fasting should be to lift up our spirit, to push our flesh down and to lift up our spirit. How many of you know that our spirit and our flesh go hand in hand? If our flesh is high, our spirit is low. If our spirit is high, our flesh is low. The more we pour into our spirit, the more it pushes our flesh down. The more we pour into our flesh, pushes our spirit down. It's all interacting. So if we can fast with a purpose, we need to fast with a purpose to make sure that we're not just doing it for say health benefits. But I don't know about you. How many here like to be hungry? Unanimous again. I don't like being hungry. My flesh does not like being hungry. And my flesh desires to have food. But see, if all we're doing is fasting, and I'm hungry, I can go over to the house. If I'm not fasting, I'm sorry, I'm getting that mixed up. If I'm not fasting and I'm hungry, I can walk right next door, go in there and raid the kitchen. That happens quite often. I don't know about you guys. It happens quite often. Matter of fact, I find myself, even when I'm fasting and I'm hungry, but in between my hunger pains, I have a desire to go over and get something to eat. It's not because my stomach's telling me I want food. It's just because I want to go get something and eat it. I think it pulls on me more than my stomach growling. It's just the desire to go eat. There's times I'll walk over and I'm not hungry. I won't walk over, but I'm in the kitchen. I'm not hungry, but I'm looking for something to chew on, something to munch on. And our flesh wants that. It desires that. But when I'm fasting, I don't have that choice. I can't just go over and get what I want when I want. That's not the case. We can't do that. And so that's putting our flesh into subjection. It's pushing our flesh down. It's telling King Stomach, I think I said last week, King Jesus, got to dethrone him. We got to dethrone King Stomach sometimes. We got to push the plate back so that we can grow spiritually and seek the Lord and find out what He is telling us. I don't like going hungry just for the purpose of being hungry. So if I'm going to be hungry, I want it to be for a purpose. And that's the same way with each one of us. If we're going to fast, make it for a purpose. Make it for a reason. There's so many things out there that we can be fasting for. Examine your life a little bit. You'll find all kinds of things that we can look at inside of ourselves and think, while I'm fasting, I'm going to fast for this. Lord, I'm going to fast for this. I'm going to fast for this. And if we look for the purposes and we target those things while we're fasting, then it becomes fasting with a purpose. But last week I talked about in Isaiah 58, 5 through 12, I believe. And I'm going to just touch on a couple scriptures out of that this week too. And this is Isaiah 58:6. Is this not, this is the Lord speaking, is this not the fast that I have chosen? Well, the answer to this one is yes. This is a fast that the Lord has chosen. This is the fast that He's called us to. But remember last week I told you about in verse 5, He asked the same thing. But this was not a fast that He chose for them. For this was a fast that they were just fasting to be approved of man, so that man could see us fast, not God. It was all about man. It was just a religious act. They were playing the hypocrite. And then in Matthew 6:16, I showed you last week, moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrite. So we can play the hypocrite. If we do things to fast to get man's approval, we're playing the hypocrite. We're fasting simply for the reason to get man to pat us on the back, to look good in man's eyes, and we're neglecting God. Fasting is a personal thing. You know, it's not about doing things so everybody else can see you fast. Now, it's sort of hard. We know that we're doing a corporate fast, and we can look at our neighbor. Most likely they're fasting. You know, but this is different because this is corporately coming, and we're not doing it to impress each other. Matter of fact, none of you know what, at least I don't think, most of you don't know what the other one's doing, how you're fasting or, you know, what you're doing there. So we're not doing it to impress man. We're doing it in a way to please God. We're trying to get God's attention. We're trying to get where we can pull in closer to Him. You know, we're trying to be serious with God. But we need to do it in a way, like I said, that pleases pleases God, not man. But we need to fast with a purpose. So you see, when we fast with a purpose, well, let me stop. So what is the purpose? What is our purposes? In these particular scriptures that I'm looking through right now, I'm going to go through 4 things in Isaiah 58:6. This scripture says, the first one, we fast to loose the bonds of wickedness. How many of you realize that in our might be in our family, in our society, in our nation, that there is bonds of wickedness? There is bonds of wickedness. We can fast to loosen the bonds of wickedness. How many of you here have bonds of wickedness, would like to have bonds of wickedness removed off your? Might be your own personal family. Might be things that are going on in our immediate family, like with me and Candy. You know, might be something like that. Or what about off the bonds of your family, say like your brother and your sister? Like me, my brother and sister my age, they have their own family, off their families. What about off your mom or your dad? What about off of your children, your grandchildren? Your great-grandchildren. Does anybody have great-greats? You have? Okay. All my kids are great-greats. even though they're only grandchildren. Amen. But we can fast to loose the bonds off of our family or our friends. People we know, we can look around. It doesn't take us very much to look around and see the bonds of wickedness affecting different people in our lives. It might even be infiltrating into our lives, you know, and we need to fast for a purpose, and the purpose is to remove the bonds of wickedness. And I don't know about you, but how many believe that there's way too much wickedness in this world? There's way too much wickedness, you know, in our nation, in our state, even right here in our own community. There's bonds of wickedness, and we can fast to remove the bonds of wickedness. Number 2, to undo the heavy burden. How many here feel like you have a heavy burden? Something you are going through, something that seems to be burdensome on you. Now, this might be something that might have to do with you, again. It might be something to do with somebody you know, relative, family, friends, whatever, that seem to have these heavy burdens on them. Whether it's things like financial reasons, or maybe it's job related, or maybe it's a physical problem. You know, there's so many things that can put us under a burden, that feel like we have heavy burdens on us. But yeah, like I said, we don't just, in our time of fasting, and this doesn't just get fasting, but I believe that when we are pushing back from the table, I believe that we really get the Lord's attention on things. We can be praying for these things anytime. These ain't just things that have to be done during our fasting. But pray for other people. Pray for other people. I don't know about you, it doesn't take much to look around and see the needs of other people. So let's target other people that the Lord takes the heavy burden off of them. So what is a burden? A burden is a problem or a responsibility that causes someone a lot of difficulty or worry or hard work. It can also be painful or unpleasant. How many of you feel like you got some of that stuff on you? There's a lot of things that we can that can be difficult for us, or worrisome for us, or hard work, or some things even are painful or unpleasant. I think everybody can look around and say, I got a burden on me, if that's the description. A burden can be different things for different people. Now, what might be a burden to me? I feel like I'm under a burden and has me pushed down. To you, you might think, that ain't a burden. But to me it is. Same thing with you. You might have something that you feel is a burden. I might look and say, well, that's not a burden. But we're all different, and a burden can be different things to different people. But let me ask you, wouldn't you want your heavy burdens removed? Wouldn't you want the heavy burdens to be removed off of your loved ones, off your friends, off our community, off our nation, off our world? We can pray for those things. Amen. So let's fast to undo the heavy burden. Number 3, to let the oppressed go free. Now, oppressed can be a lot of different things, but oppression can be when you feel like you are held down, pressed down, you're oppressed. There's a lot of reasons you can feel that, the oppression. So you can't just. Let's say it's a physical problem, and you can't do the things that you want to do. You can't even do the things you need to do. That can oppress you. That can make you feel like you're pressed down, like you got a weight on you. And you know something? Oppression leads to, in a lot of cases, leads to depression. There's a lot of people that are depressed in the world because they're oppressed. People with physical limitations can feel oppressed. Because they can't do what they want to do when they want to do it, or that they need to do it. And this can actually lead, I'm just repeating myself. I'm sorry. My dad, I've told you about him. He had a heart attack and a stroke. My dad was a workaholic. My dad, he just loved to work. But afterwards, my dad couldn't work the way he wanted to work. He would get to a point where about a year before, I believe it was around a year before, he told us that he just wanted to go home. He just wanted to hug his Jesus. Now, looking at my dad, he's still getting around, he's still doing, but he was just saying, I just want to go home. I want to hug my Jesus. Why? Because he was a worker, and he couldn't do the things that he wanted to do because of his physical abilities. A lack of the physical abilities. Matter of fact, the day he died, my dad was out getting firewood. He still had the ability to get out and do things, but because he couldn't do what he used to do, I believe he was oppressed by his physical issues, and I believe he was even depressed. That's the reason he felt he was done. He just wanted to go see his Jesus. So I believe that oppression can lead to depression, and the whole thing is the Lord can heal both. The Lord can remove the oppression, but he can also remove the depression from us. Do you know that almost 10% of Americans will deal with depression this year? That is a lot of people. I don't know how many's in here. That could be 2 or 3 people in here. 10%. Nope, that ain't quite right. I don't know. Yeah, I think that is right. Get my math going, get my calculator going. But that could be 2 or 3 people in here. Somebody sitting right next to you could actually be oppressed or depressed. But if we see people that we think are, let's lift them up in prayer and ask the Lord to remove that from them. See, I serve a very big God. He's not limited by what we're limited to. And He can remove the oppression out of your life. Sometimes the Lord might even, to remove the oppression out of your life and depression, He might mean that He heals your body physically. See, I believe if my dad's body would have been healed physically and he could have did the things he wanted, he wouldn't be oppressed and depressed. He wouldn't want to be going home. But I believe that a physical healing sometimes can do that. How many believe that Jesus is still in the healing business today? You know, I know of people, some of this is different, but I know of different individuals that I trust that say that they saw one man that had a shorter leg, his leg actually grew. Now that don't even sound possible. It ain't with man, but nothing's impossible with God. If God says it grows, it grows. A good pastor friend of mine, he said he was praying over a man that had a milky eye. His eye was no good. Couldn't see out of it. He prayed over him and he saw the color and everything come back in his eye. God is still in the healing business today. I told you about a young man, his name was Ben, from Jensen Franklin's church, that on the morning that they started their 21-day fast a few years ago, he was in the hospital with a 103-degree temperature fighting for his life because he had leukemia. And that they dedicated that service to this young man. And at the time that they dedicated that service to this young man, that the fever broke with no brain damage, that he was healed of his leukemia, it went into remission. God can do it just like that. Nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is impossible with God. Remember last week, I used Isaiah 58:8, and it said, "Your healing shall spring forth speedily." This is right out of the chapter here where he's talking about fasting. Fasting sometimes can be the process that the Lord's going to use to heal your body. How many has aches and pains? Wow. I envy the rest of you because I got aches and pains. I got this thing going on in my ear. I'm fasting. Lord, heal this thing. I'm tired of this. Take this away. Different physical problems we have, that we have aches and pains. But this scripture says, your healing shall spring forth speedily. That's what happened to Ben, is that his healing sprung forth speedily. That's what I pray for. Lord, heal us speedily. Doesn't always mean He'll do it just like that. Sometimes it's still a process that He takes us through to heal us. But He has that ability. 4, that you break every yoke. Fasting can break every yoke that has you in bondage, whether it's things like addictions. Now, when we say addictions, we think of things like drug abuse, alcohol abuse, tobacco abuse, gambling. We think of things like that. But addictions can be anything that has a hold on us. People get addicted to these things. I don't know about you. They can be addicting. And if they're addicting, then that's something that we can fast. And the Lord can actually, not that we can't use them. These things are a tool. But when they get a hold of us and just hold us, then that's when we want the Lord to break that addiction. We can get addicted to things like social media or the news. We can get addicted, like I said, coffee or shopping, chocolates. Uh-oh. How many likes chocolates? I love chocolates. Now, I'm not addicted to them, but things like that, things can get us addicted and we don't even know it. It's anything that it feels like we can't live without, that we think we can't live without. That becomes an addiction. That becomes a bondage in our life. It might be things like our own thoughts. Our own thoughts can take us into bondage. Addiction is a bondage. Our own thoughts can take us into bondage. I don't know about you, My thoughts at times take me into areas I shouldn't be. You know, it's like, you know, you're constantly hearing the enemy coming at you, and you allow it and we allow it in there. But sometimes our own thoughts can take us into bondage. Thoughts like, I'm inadequate, I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes. I mean, and you could fill this thing up with different things about how your mind can tell lie to you about what you're not, discourage you, put you down. Your own mind can do that to you. We can have a yoke of negative thoughts toward ourselves. And these yokes can all have us in bondage. Removal of bondage represents freedom. Do you know that? If we remove the yoke off of us, that represents freedom. That represents freedom. You know, they used to yoke oxen together and stuff, or put them in singles, I think, and sometimes doubles and whatever. When that oxen was out of the yoke, they were free. Sometimes we can be under the yoke of our different things in our life, whether it's addictions, whether it's our thought life, whatever it is. So we need to fast with a purpose. We need to fast with a purpose. Fast so that you loose the bonds of wickedness. Fast so you undo the heavy burden. Fast to let the oppressed go free. Fast to break the yoke of every yoke. But fast with a reason. This is just a small list. There's all kinds of things we can be fasting for. I don't want to just fast to be hungry. If I'm going to fast, I want to make the most out of my fast. I want to draw closer to the Lord. I want to fast for purposes, for myself, my family, or others. There's all kinds of reasons that we can be fasting. Other reasons for fasting might be for direction in our lives. If you have a big decision to make in your life, fast and pray over it. I worked with a guy a lot of years ago when I lived in Eureka, and he was thinking about moving his family to Billings. And we were talking about it, and he's telling me about this is what he's thinking about. And he's a Christian man. And I asked him, I said, have you fasted about it? And he looked at me and says, no, I don't like fasting. I said, that's the purpose of it. Who does? Who likes to fast? But if you want to know, if you're going to get ready to make an important decision in your life, there ain't nothing better than to fast for it and seek God for His direction. He was getting ready to move his family. I don't know how many miles it is from Eureka. I think it's about a 9-hour drive from Eureka to Billings. You're moving your family that far away from everything you know. You better know that that's what the Lord wants. And there ain't a better way to do it than to fast. The point of fasting is is we want to put this flesh down. See, our flesh wants what our flesh wants.